2018 to order. Can I have a roll call of members, please?
Dirk Bowden,
Present.
Alan Bucknam,
Present.
Emery Dorsey,
Present.
Janet Leo,
Present.
Amanda Weaver,
Present.
Vivian Voss,
Present.
Donna Kimsey, and Scott Ohm are absent tonight.
Next item up is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I move to approve the order.
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, in that case, I'll call for a vote.
Motion passed 6-0.
Next item up is the approval of the minutes for January 18th, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes of January 18th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any additions or corrections? Okay, let's call for a vote.
Motion passed 5-0 with one abstaining.
All right, next up is the public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak on any items not in the agenda. Is there anyone signed up? Okay. Okay, I have a Will Sugar and Cheryl Mossberger. Sugai? I'm sorry about that. Are you here to speak about the Quail Street? Okay. So is there anyone else, maybe Mary Louise Rohr? Okay. Okay, so we can get to that later. So is there anyone else here to speak about items not on the agenda today? All right, in that case, we will close the public forum. I would now like to open the public hearing. First case up is case number WZ-18-01, an application filed by Tom Kennedy for approval of a zone change from agricultural 1 to mixed-use neighborhood on property located at 4433 Tabor Street, and I'll ask for the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Good evening. For the record, I'm Meredith Reckert in the Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. Joining me this evening at the staff table are Lauren Mikulak, Planning Manager, and Dave Brossman, Public Works Development Review Engineer. Tonight I'm presenting case number WZ-1801, which is a request for approval of a zone change from A1 to mixed-use neighborhood on property at 4433 Tabor Street. I'd like to enter into the record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, comprehensive plan, and the contents of this digital presentation. The property is within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met. Therefore, Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this case. So this is a 2016 aerial of the vicinity. The property is outlined in bright blue, and as you can tell, Tabor Street runs along its eastern perimeter. There is somewhat of a mix of land uses in the area. On the western side of Tabor, it's primarily commercial with the Heine's Fruit Market location down here. This is the subject site. This is an office warehouse building that's been there since about 1988, and this is the trailer sales and servicing development. Further to the west is the I-70 on and off ramps. I always think that they were recently constructed, but I think they've been in place for about 7 years, so I'm dating myself. On the western side of Tabor, it's primarily residential, and agricultural. So starting down at the corner of 44th and Tabor, this is a multifamily development. I believe this is a single-family home. This is vacant agricultural property. As you get further north of 46th Avenue, it's a fairly stable residential neighborhood, I believe, with single-family and duplexes. The parcel is just less than an acre in size. It is rectangular in shape and is really no apparent irregularities as far as shape or topography.
Could we get
So this is the
the
same-
lights turned down just a little bit for the audience?
The volume?
The lights. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Is my sound okay? Okay. Okay, this is the same aerial photo, but with the zoning layer on it. Again, the property is shown in bright blue. And again, Tabor Street over on the eastern perimeter with 44th Avenue down to the south, I-70 on-off ramps. Further to the west, the different colors in the image do represent different zonings in the vicinity. The subject property is zoned agricultural 1. To the south of that is commercial 1, which has the Heine's Fruit Market. To the north, we've got some planned development with that existing office flex space area and the trailer sales and service. On the eastern side of Tabor, starting south here at 44th Avenue, is R3 zoning, which is appropriate for the multifamily. This is a single family with R1, another large piece of A1 property. And then as we get farther north, 46th Avenue and beyond, we've got R2 zoning. Just a couple pictures of the site. It is somewhat deep, so it was a little hard to get anything beyond kind of what's just on the Tabor Street frontage, but you can see the existing house on the property. Like I say, it has been used residentially and agriculturally. Currently, there is somebody who's residing in the house. Access to the existing property is from a driveway to the south side of that existing house from Tabor Street. And then this is a view sort of to the northwest. Subject property is over here on the left side of the image, and this is that existing office warehouse project that I believe has been here since the late 80s. So the existing zoning on the property is agricultural 1, and in this particular case, the agricultural 1 is very limiting. Generally, the Ag 1 property or zoning allows single-family residential and also limited agricultural uses. There's also a list of special uses, things like riding stables and fish hatcheries and, sort of those, what I like to call as being somewhat of our heritage from Jefferson County. We didn't incorporate until 1969, and much of the development out there was done under Jefferson County. The kicker is that since the property is under 1 acre in size, the minimum size for an A1 lot is 1 acre, it can only be used as single-family residential. So right there, the list of uses is very limiting. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to mixed-use neighborhood, and that district is intended for neighborhood main streets, neighborhood commercial centers. It allows residential, civic, and office uses, also a limited range of neighborhoods serving commercial and retail. And although the zone change can be speculative in nature, where someone is not quite sure what they want to do with it, the applicant in this case would like to build live-work units. So the units would be comprised with workspace on the bottom with an accessory residence on the top. If the zoning goes through, development of the site would be reviewed administratively for the site plan and would have to adhere to the mixed-use design standards, which include architectural requirements and so on. Tabor Street at this location is designated as a collector, and I looked at traffic counts, and they're a little bit old. They're about 10 years old, and they were showing about 3,000 cars per day. It is a primary north-south route between 44th and 52nd, which connects both I-70 Frontage Road and the Wheat Ridge Ward commuter rail station. And the character of Tabor does vary, and I would suspect that based on the activity, the commercial development we've got north of the freeway, that those traffic counts, if we were to do those today, would be quite a bit larger. So, although the character of Tabor does vary, in this particular location, commercial on the western side seems to make sense. This is the last residentially zoned property on the west side of Tabor. So this is a quick comparison of the development standards. Like I say, the A1 zone district really is something that we inherited from Jefferson County. We don't have a lot of it anymore. And because the size of the lot is less than an acre, all it can be used for is single-family residential. There are no architectural standards. The ag zone districts allows metal buildings and pole barns and some of those typical structures you would see with an ag property. Maximum height is 35 feet, minimum front setback is 30 feet, and maximum lot coverage in the ag zone district is 25%. With the mixed-use neighborhood, the uses allowed would include anything from single-family residential up through medium to higher density residential, neighborhood-scaled commercial, or mixed use. There are architectural requirements that would have to be adhered to, both as far as the kinds of materials that can be used and requirement for facade articulation, which makes a more interesting building. The building height, if it has residential in it, is 35 feet. If it's strictly commercial, it would be 50 feet. For a building orientation, they would be required to meet a build-to line, which would draw the building closer to Tabor Street. And for lot coverage, 90% for a mixed use, 85% for single use. So again, we're feeling from a staff perspective that given kind of the variation of all the different zone districts in the area, it is appropriate to review the MUN, not only to the A1 zoning, but in relationship to the existing conditions and surrounding zoning. The mixed-use zone district, we've got 4 different categories. This is the one that we use when it's in more of a mixed area where we've got commercial and maybe some lower density residential, and we do feel it is appropriate at this location. So the process for a zone change includes a neighborhood meeting. We did have one late in the spring. We had 3 neighbors in attendance with different comments. We did go through a full referral process on this. No concerns from any agencies were noted. The applicant, if the property is redeveloped, will be responsible for any sort of utility upgrades. And we would include a separate referral for any development in the future. Planning Commission is going to be giving a recommendation to City Council, who is having a public hearing for this case on March 26th. So just in about a month and a half. As Commission is aware, we do have specific criteria. I don't want to open both of those, especially since I have a cold. We do have specific criteria enumerated in Chapter 26 that we use when we do an assessment of a zone change application, and it relates to things like impact and utilities. The most significant one, I believe, is relationship to the comprehensive plan. And the proposed comprehensive plan, which this is a piece of the structure map shown on the screen, the property is located right here. Again, this is Tabor Street. The property is located within this red area, which designates mixed-use commercial. Now, on the east side of Tabor, we've got a neighborhood designation, and also would note that Tabor Street is designated as a collector street, and we do go ahead and make the the finding that the proposed zone change is consistent with the designation on the comp plan. Again, the request also meets the other zone change criteria detailed in the staff report. And again, some of the conclusions that we've made are that the proposed zone district is compatible with the surrounding area. It strikes a balance between the surrounding zone districts and land uses. Staff believes that zone change will not have an adverse effect on the public welfare, is supported by the city's comp plan, and provides an opportunity for investment and revitalization of an underutilized property. And for these reasons, we are giving a recommendation of approval. That would conclude my staff comments, and I would be happy to answer questions at this point.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Buckman.
Thanks, Meredith. I just have one question. If you could go to the zone map.
Sure.
So on the zone map there, the area that's directly to the south and south of the subject property, and and over there. Yeah, it seems to be colored the same as what's there. So is that currently also Ag 1?
It is agricultural one, and it's a little bit confusing because it looks like it's an extension of Heine's. Actually, it's part of the detention area that was created when I-70 was put in place.
Okay,
Typically, we wouldn't go ahead and do a zone change on that.
sure. Yeah, I know there are a lot of rights of way that never get rezoned.
All of I-70 is zoned A1 as well.
If that is part of the drainage behind Heine's, is there, are there any drainage concerns associated with, potentially slightly higher density development, zone change into, MUN towards the back of that property that we need to consider?
Well, they, of course, will have to meet the requirements for stormwater quality and detention. Dave, I don't know if you want to expand at all about that. Dave will be the one who's reviewing the drainage report.
Sure. When they get to the design phase, we will certainly address that in the drainage report and be sure that they have adequate features on site to handle that.
Okay, yeah, I know that's, my question is kind of cart before the horse, but just bringing up the drainage made me think of that. All right, that's all, thanks.
I have a question on the building that is in existence to the north of
Sure.
this plan. What is that? Is that a PCD?
It's a PCD.
Okay. And then if the zoning of an MUN does get approved, can the applicant choose not to develop the property and sell it? And then whatever that ownership is just passes as an MUN without any,
They would definitely have the option to sell. Now, the applicant is in the audience, so you might want to ask that question to them.
I guess my real question is, does the MUN then would follow the sale and it would not have to come back for any kind of a review
Yes,
to
that's
the
correct.
new buyer? All right, thank you.
I don't have any further questions. So if nobody else on the commission does, this would be the time where the applicant can come up to the podium and make a presentation. You don't have to. But please state your name and address into the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Tom Kennedy. My address is 11941 I-70 Frontage Road North, which is 500 yards from the property. I'm representing Randy here and Brian and myself, and we've been on this project for quite a while, but the reason we're originally in the city of Wheat Ridge is because we had a different piece of property that we wanted to do the mixed use, and by mixed use, literally an apartment up above the warehouse or an apartment up above the office space. So part of our logic is it's a new green thing now if you have to go that way, because you're literally keeping someone off the road, and because they're working where they live, and so that in itself is a relatively good idea. Plus, for the neighborhood, it's very beneficial because you have less traffic. You don't have literally no outside storage. So the whole area it's tempered in the sense that you have the people that own the places are also living there. So that is helpful. But particularly with the no outside storage and the less traffic, and particularly in the evening, this would be a nice place to be by. So, anyway, that's right. We've already talked to Dave on the storage, and I love the way he addressed that. He said, well, look at the detention pond that's in the warehouse beside you, and then double that. So there are some efforts to make sure that we have all the water issues resolved, but we've already been working on that. So, but I have to say one thing, the city of Wheat Ridge is a joy to work with. We have been working with other municipalities and we won't name Jefferson County, but on the same token, Wheat Ridge is a joy to work with. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments, responses to the applicant? Okay. We'll now open up the citizens forum. Do we have a John that would like to speak on this issue? John, please state your full name and address into the podium, please, the microphone.
I can do that. Done it many a times at a city council meeting. My name is, in fact, John Clark. I live at 4665 Swadley Street. If you look on that map above the 46, my house is probably right under that R in the R2, just to give you a reference. So, like I said, I have been here many, many times. Not at planning, but at city council. So I'm glad that the gentleman thinks that Wheat Ridge is so easy to work with. I have found the exact opposite. Up and into including other zoning issues, and this one. So let me tell you, first of all, how I got here. I was, in fact, at that meeting on, I think it was May of 2017. 6 o'clock meeting upstairs here. I know that Meredith's little list said that there was 3 people in attendance. There was not at 6 o'clock. There was me. So I was the only neighbor that showed up on time at 6 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, after the meeting had pretty much been done, there was 2 other people, man and wife, that came, and they said they thought it was at 7, and that's fine. But I do not consider those 2 people part of that meeting. They live over there. If you look off 44th North where the R3 is, they're somewhere around that R is where they're at. Actually closer to the R2 on that R. But so I just want to clarify that we had an hour-long meeting, and I was the only one there from the neighborhood. I was shown a very, very nice plan. Little big. I don't know if you guys have access to it or if you guys can see it. 12 units. Kind of looks like Ms. Voss was talking about the unit to the north, a warehouse space. But that warehouse space is a single level, and it's 6 units, and it's, I don't know what you call it exactly, but it's a warehouse door and maybe a little office door, so you could run a glass company or a garage door company out of it. Again, it is single story, and there is no residential on it. The proposal they came with showed 12, kind of the same thing, but with 12 units, double the height, living on top, working on the bottom, same kind of thing, if I remember right. It had a garage door and an office door. You could, again, run a cabinet shop or a glass store or something. So at the time, I thought it it was a little overbearing. I thought, 12 units instead of 6, and now you're going to live there and work there. But overall, I thought, I'm not against development, so I can't bitch about the plan. My problem, and I think that Meredith will attest to this, was that they were not zoning, they were not pulling for a zoning for that plan. And I asked them at the time, this is negotiation. If I negotiate to the fact that I'm okay with what you're showing me, why don't you zone it to that? Okay? The city of Wheat Ridge has a very, very bad record of pulling zoning on something with a picture, with a very nice picture. They draw a very nice picture, nice house, community garden. They get the zoning for something much bigger. Then all of a sudden the property's sold, or to Ms. Voss's point, property's sold, bank wouldn't do this, new president was elected, the change in the market. I mean, there's just a million reasons. All of a sudden we come up with something else, a different plan. Oh, well, that house with the community garden was gonna look nice there, but we have this zoning, so we're gonna build this. Don't believe me, look at 32nd and Teller. Don't believe that one, there's numerous other ones. I mean, look all the way down 38th. Hell, I was in this room 3 nights ago on Monday with 350 other people talking about this exact same thing about the Clear Creek crossing site. The exact same thing. We want it developed. We've wanted it developed. Nobody's against the development here. They say they're going to do this, and this. It'll be beautiful. It'll be great. They actually sold a tax increase to build the hook ramps on a picture. This is what we're going to build. Monday, there was 350 people in here trying to figure out, that wasn't in that plan. What happened? Where did this come from? Same thing. Same exact thing. So those people that want to label me, anti-development or anti-growth, how many A1 properties are left in Wheat Ridge, Meredith? Can you answer that? Well, I can look at this map, and I mean, my eyes aren't the greatest, but I see 3. That's one of them. There's one across the street. There's a big giant for sale sign, 2 acres, for sale. My guess, and maybe you guys don't want to hear my guesses, but if Meredith can speculate and guess that there's a lot more than 3,000 cars on Tabor now, because that's a 10-year-old statistic, my backyard looks at Tabor. You want to ask me how many cars go by Tabor? You think it's more, you think it's less. So I think if the city staff can speculate on how many cars are going up and down the street, maybe I can speculate that once that zoning changes on that said property, the A1 property across the street gets a green light to be sold, knowing that they can get the exact same zoning. And they'll get an exact same MUN. And like I said, my eyes aren't that great. So I'm going to put on my glasses. And I looked it up. And I'll tell you, my day's been pretty hectic. I had an accountability meeting over at the high school. We had teacher conferences. So I didn't have a lot of time. And I realized that city staff has 40 hours a week. They get paid to do this. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't have everything, because I only have about 2 hours to work on it.
Just remind you, sir, we have a 2-minute limit on speaking.
Somebody better show me that rule, because the way I looked it up today, there's no limit.
So please finish your point. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to read real quick, just so everybody knows, in the permitted uses for MUN. And I'm not going to read every one of them. I'm just going to read a couple of them, that if that property gets zoned MUN, if the other one across the street gets rezoned MUN, these are some of the things they can build. Not what they're showing you, what they can build when they sell the property. Let's face it, it's worth a lot more with MUN zoning than it is with an A1 zoning. We could build an assisted living facility, foster care home, residential group home, a library. You could build a college, a school, or university, bank. I like this one, bars, taverns, and nightclubs. Permitted, MUN, permitted. Bed and breakfast. That's what we need, is another bed and breakfast over there. Microbrewery, micro distillery, or micro winery with a tap room. That's what I need in my neighborhood. Retail sales up to 20,000 gross square feet for one tenant space. Hotel, motel, and extended stay lodging. You know how many motels are over there? Do you realize the problems that we have with the motels over there? We could build a theater, parking facility. I mean, the list is 4 pages. I'm not going to read them all. I would just like to know when city staff is actually going to start listening. I just changed the picture on that. When they're going to start listening to residents when they come up and they talk. I've been to many, many, many city council meetings, many other meetings. Staff does what they want, period. The only guy that showed up at that neighborhood meeting was me, and I didn't want it. What did staff do? Okay, we're still gonna get it. And I will assure you that if you guys pass this, council passes it, if they get that MUN zoning, I will be back here in 2 years showing you the same picture from the same view of not what they're showing you. I will guarantee it. And I am so tired of it in this city, so tired of the city staff running all over its residents, telling them what's going to go, what they're going to do. I'm pissed off at this point. Keep that A1. Keep across the street A1. We have 3 properties A1 in this city. Jesus Christ, we're Tree City, USA? We're an agriculture city? Are we? You got to kind of have some grassland somewhere, guys. You got to be able to put a pig or a horse or something somewhere, right? Sustainability. We got a Wheat Ridge Sustainability Committee that's got like 20 members. They're talking about sustainability in Wheat Ridge. If you pave every piece of grass in the city of Wheat Ridge, we are not sustainable. We can't be sustainable. You can't be sustainable without a male chicken and a male goat and a male cow. You can't do it. You can't be sustainable if everything's asphalt.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
I'd like to make a comment about the neighborhood meeting. And yes, Mr. Clark was there at 6. The meeting started at 6. And we did have folks come late, Jim Turgeon and his wife, I can't remember her name. And I've known them for a long time. They've been property owners in the city over 20 years. Their development was protested in that it would like ruin the neighborhood, and they're beautiful units, a series of duplexes and triplexes. I would never exclude anybody from commenting. And I think that the allegation, I have a problem with that, because if we started the planning commission meeting at 7 and somebody showed up at 8, we would not allow them to testify. That's not how we do business here.
I did not say that it was. I simply said that the meeting had gone on. We had discussed it. They weren't part of it. If you wanted to start the meeting over at 7, we could have, but we didn't. So
if you had shown up late, I would have brought it back around, include you in too.
I think we really just need to keep the issue at the zoning change. We can't speculate beyond what happens if the zoning change is
And I
approved
would
or
like to keep it at
disapproved.
the zoning.
And I think, yeah, we need to keep this civil, and we need to move on to see if anybody else would like to speak in the public forum.
Well, I don't think there was anybody else on there, but I'll definitely give anybody else a chance. But to the persons, I'm not running it, but when I hear people talking and saying this live-work unit, 12 units of live-work will be greener than A1, greener? Yeah. Understand, guys, I'm sorry, but I'm pissed off. I've been dealing with this shit for 5 years. And I'm tired of it. Tired.
Anybody else like to speak? All right. Commissioners, do you have any responses or questions for the applicant or for staff? Okay, Ms. Voss?
Well, to the fact of understanding the MUN, I'm looking at the maximum height building, and at the MUN level, it's 35 feet tall if the building has residential use. So I know there's a bit of problem with a bait and switch. We talk about 12 units, 2 stories, which would be 29 feet, I believe. And so they're, under this guidance, 35 feet wouldn't allow another story, so it would have to be held at the 2-story. 50 feet for all other uses, which then means we're looking at a 5-story, whatever. And so, to the point that's been brought up, and maybe Meredith can talk to the other possible zonings for this particular project, but if it is sold, if the MUN is there, and then 50 feet is allowed, then we have a whole different look to what's going on to the property than what was told for us here tonight. And I don't, there's been other zoning that has been changed, and then it's not looked like what it was at the time that we zoned it. So I feel that we've been a little bit snookered in the city with some of this kind of allowance. And
Let me address that first part, and
Sure.
then if you've got another one, we can follow up. So a couple of things. As the commission is aware, zoning runs with the land. So you are rezoning a piece of property or considering rezoning a piece of property to MUN, regardless of sort of site plan or development proposal. Some applicants come to you with a mixed-use request, and they know very specifically what they want. Some don't. So, take it with a grain of salt that you've heard that there's a proposal for live work. This would be a rezone to mixed-use neighborhood, so very clearly would allow anything in that use chart or by those development standards. I think in this case, it's appropriate to sort of compare what those standards are, not just to the A1, but to the other commercial zonings next door. So live work includes a residential use. If we play that scenario forward, that's limited to 35 feet. That can sometimes accommodate 3-story construction. In a live work condition, you often see a higher first floor building height because of the desire to accommodate workshops, so it's probably more realistically 2, but that's very hypothetical, so we want to sort of focus on the zoning and not the potential for a live work development. Without a residential component, it's 50 feet. That's our standard maximum height for any commercial zone district. So, for example, C1 immediately to the south is also allowed to develop up to 50 feet. I'm not sure what the specific development standards are for the 2 PCDs to the north. As you know, those are customized zoning documents, and they're now each, I think, a couple decades old, the one to the north, and then maybe 10, 15 years old at Trailer Source. So those standards may vary a little bit. I think in terms of, addressing what you're saying is sort of bait and switch, and I think what Mr. Clark's concerns are, obviously we're not here tonight to speculate on whether the portion of Cross Tabor would ever rezone. You saw the comprehensive plan that's designated as neighborhood. We have had inquiries about that property, and we've been very frank that it's designated as neighborhood. So for the purpose of sort of what is the zoning that will run with the land on the subject property, I would encourage you not to get too fixed on it could be live work, because it could be live work and it could be sort of all of those other things in that use chart.
okay.
I'll make a motion. I'm moving to recommend approval of case number WZ-18-01, a request for approval of a zone change from agricultural 1 to mixed-use neighborhood for property located 4433 Tabor Street for the following reasons. The proposed zone change will promote the public health, safety, or welfare of the community and does not result in an adverse effect on the surrounding area. The proposed zone change is consistent with the goals and the objectives of the city's comprehensive plan and Fruitdale sub-area plan. The proposed zone change is consistent with the character of Tabor Street. The zone change will provide opportunity for reinvestment in the area, and the criteria used to evaluate a zone change support this request.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to add, I'm going to be, I made the motion and I'm supporting this, this resolution because while Tabor is definitely right at that interface between neighborhood and commercial, the existing uses that we have over on that west side of Tabor, I think are very appropriate for an addition of a mixed-use neighborhood parcel in there. I think actually the MUN's versatile enough that if someone wanted to come in and put in all residential, if they wanted to come in and put in something commercial similar to what's to the north or something similar to what's to the south, I think all of those uses would be in character with the neighborhood. So that's why I'm supporting this.
Call for a vote? Oh, go ahead.
I would just like also to respond to what was said tonight, because I agree with Commissioner Buckman. I am a person who does agriculture in the city of Wheat Ridge, and one of the issues is that when you don't have continuous spaces, it's very hard to do agriculture. And when you look at this map and you look at the A1, there isn't actually agricultural things being done on those A1 things. And part of that is because it's segmented. And I would like to sort of respond as a person who does do those things in the city of Wheat Ridge, that I think the city of Wheat Ridge has done an excellent job of creating zone districts to speak to what is appropriate for neighborhoods, what is appropriate for agriculture. So that was my response. Thanks.
Okay, I'll call for a vote.
Motion carried 5-1.
Next up is case number MS17-08, an application filed by Brad Wyman for approval of a 4-lot subdivision for single-family homes located at 3275 Quail Street. Ask for the staff report, please.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, I'm Lauren McLacka, planner with the Community Development Department, presenting this case tonight. It's a request for approval of 4-lot subdivision. I want to enter into the record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation. Property is within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met. You have jurisdiction to hear this case this evening. We'll start here with an aerial just to get oriented to the vicinity. The subject property is outlined here in blue. North is to the top, 32nd Avenue at the bottom of the screen, and then Quail Street being the street that is adjacent to the subject property. It's currently one large property under a single ownership. There is an existing home on the property that was built in the 1980s. And you can see that it's largely surrounded by residential uses with two notable exceptions. Just to the west is part of the campus of the Applewood Baptist Church. Their sanctuary is across the street in Lakewood, but this is classroom space and obviously significant parking field. To the northeast is Prospect Valley Elementary School, and then the balance of the area is residential. What you're not seeing, because this is a little bit older aerial, are some of the new subdivisions that you've probably seen in the last couple years. So 33rd and Quail Court are both newer streets. This is the Quail Hollow subdivision that had 11 lots. It's largely built out now. I don't know if there's any empty lots out there. And then the Markwood Estates subdivision, which you would have seen in the last calendar year or so, is this long, narrow portion that was approved for a 7-lot single-family home development. And then, of course, at the very top of the screen, this natural feature is Lena Gulch. An excerpt from the zoning map. So the 2 or 3 colors you see here are representing that sort of predominantly residential character of the area. That brighter yellow color that's also on the subject property is residential 1. It's our largest lot, single-family zone district. So minimum lot sizes are 12,500 square feet. Minimum widths are 100 feet. R1A, also a single-family zone district with just slightly smaller requirements for lot size and width. And then off to the top right is a planned residential development. The very bottom strip of the screen is not shaded because that's not in the city of Wheat Ridge. 32nd Avenue in this location represents the boundary between Wheat Ridge and Lakewood. Just a couple images of the property. This is taken from 32nd Avenue looking west. So it's a pretty large property, so I'm not sure that these images do it justice. But you can see it's got direct frontage there on 32nd, and then another image looking north on Quail. In the background, you can kind of see the existing single-family home. We'll just travel a little bit north on Quail. There's the existing home, the yellow posting signs for the hearing. And then this is the very northern portion of the subject property, and so you can see in the background there's 33rd, and then some of the development associated with that Quail Hollow subdivision I was describing. So as the commission is aware, and maybe for the benefit of the audience, tonight's application is a subdivision. The subdivision regulations are found in Article 4 of the zoning code, and a subdivision plat is essentially a technical document. It doesn't change the zoning, it doesn't change the permitted uses, but it establishes essentially the rules for creating developable lots. So establishing lot lines that meet those zoning standards, establishing appropriate easements to accommodate utilities and drainage and access, and all of the sort of technical components we need to make a lot be more developable. In this case, the plat is 2 sheets, and we'll look at those. The first sheet is a standard cover sheet, standard notes, declarations, signature blocks. We'll focus on the second sheet, which is the graphic portion of the subdivision plat. A zoomed out view here, but you can see that we're establishing 4 lots. So we'll zoom in, and then I will walk us through sort of the existing conditions and proposed. Some of the subdivision plats you see separate those conditions onto 2 different sheets when it's pretty complicated. In this case, this single sheet is doing the heavy lifting to both get rid of some of the existing conditions that aren't appropriate and to create the new conditions that will allow for development for development of 4 single-family homes. So the existing conditions here highlighted in blue, the bright blue represent the existing parcel lines. So I noted there's sort of predominantly 1 large parcel. There's a small sliver, both under single ownership, total size being about 2¼ acres. The blue shading represents drainage areas. If you've been by the site, you've noticed that it's sort of heavily wooded. There's a lot of natural features, and there's currently a drainage way that flows through sort of an open natural channel, and it's substantial in size, as you can tell from this blue swath. There's also a smaller drainage easement at the north end of the property, both of which are getting vacated, and this intermediate parcel line is being removed by this sheet. The new conditions that are being proposed through the subdivision plat would, as I mentioned, create 4 lots. So you're seeing those lot lines highlighted in blue, and a tract along the western property line. I should have oriented folks. We turned 90 degrees. So north is now to the left of the screen, Quail, and 32nd. So tract A is on the western side, the bottom side of the subject property. What's highlighted in red is a right-of-way dedication that's being provided by this plat document. As the commission is aware, with any subdivision or development, we look at the adjacent streets to confirm whether or not they meet our current standards. In this case, both streets are just slightly substandard. So the dedication on Quail Street, is hardly visible on here. It's about 1.5 feet, and it would allow construction of an attached 5-foot sidewalk and curb and gutter. That's our standard for a local street. On 32nd Avenue, that is a corridor that's designated in our bicycle pedestrian plan, likely to have improvements in future years when we can make sort of a logical, larger investment on 32nd. So what we're doing is acquiring right-of-way, but not requiring construction of those improvements at that time until we have a bigger project in mind. So the dedication in that area along 32nd is 5.5 feet. This image is showing some of the new easements that are being established. The blue shading across tract A represents a drainage easement that covers that entire tract, and the yellow, sort of ochre color, represents easements that are both drainage and utility easements. It's not uncommon for an easement to be multi-purpose. Typically, you do see perimeter easements when we're creating these single-family lots. What you don't often see is that they're backloaded in this case, and the reason for that is because of the drainage design in this case. As we talked about, there's a very significant sort of open channel existing across the property, and the proposed drainage plan is to have two components. That dashed purple line that just showed up will be a underground 48-inch, 4-foot diameter pipe that will carry the significant portion of the existing flows. It's okay for pipes to be in easements on the lots because they're underground and they won't be interfered with by the property owner. The portion of the drainage facility that will be more of an open channel will be in that blue area in tract A, and that will accommodate flows for a very significant storm event. It wouldn't be very deep, it'd be about a foot, maybe 1.5 feet in a significant storm, but it's essentially the overflow. Whenever we have an open drainage feature, we require that that be in a tract to sort of protect it in posterity so that no property owner thinks, oh, that's part of my garden, you know, I'm going to start planting whatever in there. By being in a separate tract, it's more protected for the long term. So two components of the drainage that will accommodate the significant flows that exist there today, but sort of two appropriate applications in that yellow easement and that blue tract and drainage easement. I don't pretend to be an engineer. If we have questions on drainage, my colleague Dave Brassman is here to answer those questions. As with any application, and particularly subdivision, we send it on referral to all agencies that would be able to serve the property. No comments came up that need sort of additional addressing. RTD, you'll note, we sent it to them. They noted that their bus stop on 32nd is substandard, and they were understanding that we're not making modifications to that street frontage at this time. So everyone indicated that they can serve 4 lots, and the developer will continue to work with those agencies that require additional infrastructure or taps. We have had a 2-week public noticing period up to now, and we haven't received any written comment. None was included in your packet. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval of the subdivision plat. All agencies can serve the property, and this document does meet the requirements of both the zoning and the subdivision regulations. We're recommending approval with actually 6 conditions. 3 were included in your packet, 3 additional that I will pass out so that you have that for reference. We were so focused on the details of this specific lot that we neglected to include our standard requirements that a subdivision improvement agreement be executed, that parkland fees be paid, and that an HOA would be required to maintain the drainage. So those are the 3 that I'll distribute at the bottom of the list. The other 3 that are more specific to this particular property, just a typo that we found sort of after getting this package, that the note describing utility easements on the cover sheet was our standard note, which doesn't match that sort of unusual backloaded easement situation that we have here. And then oftentimes when you have a property that's not completely vacant, you know, we're creating a lot line that will bisect that existing home. So we want to make sure that this development moves forward, or we reconcile the lot line that will be bisecting that home. So the conditions being that within 2 years, if development doesn't move forward, we consolidate those lots so that the existing home is sort of has a clean title, is on a single lot. And then also that no building permits for the new homes be issued without a demo permit for the existing home. That concludes my comments. As I mentioned, Dave is here from the Public Works Division, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Questions or comments from the commission? We'll start with Commissioner Weaver. Ms. Leo?
From the applicant, is the applicant the developer? Who is the applicant, and what relationship does he have to the property?
That's a good question. He's not the current property owner, and I'll let him maybe describe sort of who he is and what his role is. He's the one who's been entitling the property, and I believe he intends to develop it, but I'll let him answer that.
Okay.
Ms. Voss? Yes. Commissioner Voss?
Just two questions. The forestry,
Yes.
yes or no, it talked about plants within the drainage.
Yep.
Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. So within the last year or two, we adopted design standards for drainage features that includes making them, when they're open channels above ground, making them a little bit more natural features instead of just a concrete sort of channel. So when that includes something like native seeds or grasses or bushes, we send it to them, and they made some suggestions on what that seed mix could be in that drainage channel.
So right now that drainage is cement?
No.
Oh, okay.
There may be a small portion, but so the part that's in the blue will look more like it is today in terms of it being more of a natural feature. It's not, we see some drainage facilities that look like sort of empty concrete swimming pools, and this is certainly not going to be one of those.
The other question I had then, thank you, was the history that was referred to on page 2, where it was originally platted in the Applewood Estates. How did that come out of that, or is it still platted for the Applewood Estates?
So if we're ever replatting property that has previously been a part of a subdivision, it's no longer part of the previous subdivision. It will become a part of what is called the Quail Creek Estate subdivision.
All right, so there's nothing.
Whatever the most recent plat is sort of where it lives.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dorsey?
I just wanted to make a comment. I was wondering why Lot 1 is so large and we're taking so much off of Lot 4. Why the lots aren't more equal? Inasmuch as we have such a drainage problem on that Lot 4. Sure. And it's really crunched down, and here you got this huge Lot 1 that, looks like you could put 2 homes in that lot.
Sure. Yeah, you could, from an acreage standpoint, probably split Lot 1 in half. I'll let maybe the applicant address their ideas for having more of a sort of trophy lot on the corner. A couple of things I didn't mention and probably should have. All of these lots far exceed the R1 standards, so they range in size from about 15,000 square feet to 29,000 square feet, where our minimum is 12. So Lot 4 looks really small compared to 1, but it still far exceeds the minimums.
Right.
And then, let's see, the widths are, I think the narrowest one is 105. They couldn't get 5 lots out of the subdivision because they couldn't get the widths. And we don't like to entertain variances for new subdivisions, and they were willing to stay within the R1 standards.
Commissioner Buckman?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Let's see. So the condition that you're recommending about no demolition of buildings until that existing structure is demolished, that's just in reference to building permits being issued on lots 1 and 2, correct? Not on all of the lots?
That's a good question,
I bel-
and that is correct, yes.
Okay.
So the specific language is no building permit shall be issued for lots 1 or 2 until a demolition permit is issued for the existing home.
Right, yeah, in the summary, it looked like it was a little more all-encompassing, so I just wanted to
Yes,
clarify
thank
that.
you. The limitations of PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Curse words.
Yeah, I know. I guess the other question I have might be for Dave Brossman. Refresh our memories on the other drainage tracts around the church parking lot there. I seem to recall is there a drainage also on the Mirkwood Estates east side, or is that on the Applewood Church, east side. I'm just concerned that we're like creating a whole lot of, I just want to make sure we're aware that we've got a lot of drainage going on around that lot, and I don't know, I'm a little concerned about that, but not, I don't know, I just wanted you to address that.
Well, and you are correct. There are two major tributaries to Lena Gulch. There's the one on the east side of Mirkwood Estates. It actually lies outside of the Mirkwood subdivision itself and is on actually the westerly side of Applewood Baptist Church. And that carries a substantial flow from the larger basin in Lakewood. And at the corner of 32nd and Quail, there's also another 30-inch pipe that goes underneath the ground. Yes, thank you, Lauren. That also carries runoff from that larger Lakewood basin. So there are actually, those two drainage ways both make their way to Lena Gulch. And the way that the drainage has been designed on this particular subject property is, as Lauren mentioned, there is a 48-inch pipe that carries the bulk of the flow from the south, the off-site flows. It actually carries between the 25-year and 50-year event. And the open channel that was referred to in the staff report, that's 25 feet wide, actually really only carries the major event, the 100-year flow, and as stated previously, it's only at about a 1.5-foot depth. So the drainage design was carefully reviewed on this one because we know there's a lot of water going here, and we really wanted to protect not only the people to the church to the west, but also the 4 lots that are going to be here. And this obviously will connect up to the Quail Hollow dual pipe that actually goes straight into Lena Gulch. So it's actually a pretty good design.
Okay, yeah, I recall when we were reviewing the Quail Hollow subdivision, there was a lot of neighborhood concern about the runoff coming off of 33rd up by the school and down Quail, and whenever we are rechanneling water, especially from a naturalized drainway like what's on this property, I just want to make sure we have it sized so that it's not going to add to any problems and hopefully mitigate.
We are really working hard to minimize that.
Okay.
Also on the slide that Ms. Michalak currently has up, there's also that pipe shown on the northerly side. Yes, that catches that current runoff. That there's an inlet on Quail that actually catches that flow you're referring to on 33rd Avenue, and it makes it into that existing easement, which is going to be vacated, of course, and moved over to the north side of the subdivision.
Okay, that's great.
So it ultimately all makes it to that major pipe that goes to the north.
Okay, all right. I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, and just to clarify, so there is a cement detention structure, looks like in Tract A or just beyond the property boundaries to the north of Tract A, in that kind of that northwest corner.
Yes.
There, and that will be maintained, correct?
Yes.
That won't be.
Yes,
There's a question
that's
on
another
that.
reason why we put these things in tracks is the HOA for the Quail Creek Estates will have to maintain this. And in Tract A, the reason there's that bump out is because there's actually a water quality feature that catches the very low flows, the dirty water, and treats it before it's released ultimately into Lena Gulch.
Okay. And my other question would be for the applicant with regards to Lot 4. There's quite a few mature trees there, and so I'd like to know, especially in that, I guess it would be the south and the southwest part of that Lot 4, if it looks like there would be room potentially to preserve some of those trees. So a little elaboration if the applicant would like to do that. So any more questions or comments from the commission? Okay, if the applicant would like to address the commission, doesn't have to, but I think there are some questions. Please state your name and address into the microphone, please.
My name is Brad Wyman. My address is 4455 West 30th Avenue, Denver, 80212. Thanks again for hearing everything. Thank you, Lauren, for covering and for Zach and presenting the plan here. Just a little bit about myself. I've born and raised in, West Arvada, Golden area. Lived here my whole life, and since got married about 10 years ago, moved into the city of Denver, started a family, have kids, and you start thinking about school systems and, wanting your kids to grow up how I grew up in West Arvada, riding your bikes around town and, having the schools nearby, a good school system. And so we've decided to make the move outside of Denver and found this lot. And we're very excited about the opportunity of moving and doing this development. I am a developer as my profession as well. This is one of our first developments that we've done in Wheat Ridge. Primarily work in Denver and have a couple, about 10 that we're doing in Littleton. But to answer one of the questions about Lot 1, that's the biggest lot because that's my lot that I'm going to actually be moving into. And as Lauren mentioned, we could have gotten 5 lots here, but again, for the sake of keeping somewhat of larger feeling estates and grander lot sizes, with homes ranging in square footage from 4 to 6,000 square feet, and us kind of calling this our forever home and moving our family to Wheat Ridge, I just wanted to have a big yard for my kids, simply put. And we are disrupting that drainage quite a bit with this. I'm not an engineer. My engineer is here. He did a great job on this. We've put a lot of time and work and effort into designing this, and ultimately, from the narrow view that I have of the drainage, it's quite an improvement to what's there. We are losing some of the wetland that's there, that's created from this natural channel that's been created, but we've taken all the steps necessary with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've purchased wetland credits to offset the wetlands that will be removed, and have looked at this very carefully and cautiously. And as far as, what were some of the other questions?
Question I had was the mature trees on the
Right.
south side.
So that was the biggest part that drew us to this lot initially, was the density of the trees that's there. Obviously, there's some trees that could probably, stand to go because they're not super healthy and have lived a long life. But that was one of the biggest things that I personally liked about Wheat Ridge, and is one thing that is hard to find in Denver, especially when you're developing in Denver and you have a little postage stamp that you're trying to build a house on. You have to eliminate every tree to be able to put a house there. So there are some obstacles and challenges that are presented with the drainage in the channel, and some of those trees being located where we need to have that overflow channel, which again is the one that's kind of isolated in the, was it bluish color. But our goal and effort is to preserve as many trees as possible. And I think we do have a plan for tree installation on the right-of-ways, or in the front right-of-ways on the Quail side. And I think that there's some tree lawn requirements for 32nd. But as many as we can salvage and save. I think we have about $8,000 to $10,000 in our budget for the site development to relocate some of the trees that are potentially able to be relocated. But inevitably, part of this development, we will lose some of the mature trees, and I don't have an exact tree survey and how that's going to be affected currently. But our main goal is to save as many as we can. But also, with that being said, knowing that because of the scope of the project and the drainage being such a huge challenge for us, we will probably lose some of them as well.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Buckman? Commissioner Dorsey? Any questions down here? Okay. Thank you very much. And at this time, we will open up the citizens forum. Looks like we have a couple of people signed up to speak. So, Will Sugai? Yeah, come on up, please, Will.
Please state your name and your address. My name is Will Sagai. I live at 11158.
Could you speak into the microphone a little bit?
Will Sagai. I live at 11158 West 33rd, and I live at we have the corner lot on Quail on the north side. I think, you guys did a great job explaining all my questions. I'm in a situation where I'm kind of embarrassed that I signed up,
Okay.
which is good for everybody. I do have one question, though. Well, a couple of questions. Mr. Wyman, I believe, are you going to increase, are you going to elevate the lot at all, or are you going to keep, how much?
So how this is going to work is, since we're on television and he doesn't have a microphone, if you could just ask your questions ahead of time, and then we'll bring the applicant back up to answer.
I'd like to know how much of an elevation change there will be on the site,
Okay.
because it's a direct reflection on maximum height on the building, because if you increase the elevation of the site, the higher the building. Also, the drainage easement on the northeast corner that's being vacated. My impression, and I'm not real sure, is that handle the drainage for an underground stream that passes between our lot and our neighbor to the south. And I was wondering whether that was built into the calculation, the hydrology of all that, and whether it could be handled, because we've had flooding already once, and I just want to know what the ramifications are.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Beyond that, I'd like to say that you shouldn't build it because of the view, but sorry.
All right.
Sorry for us.
Thank you. And now if the applicant would like to come up potentially with the engineer who could answer the hydraulics, or we can have David answer the drainage questions.
Thank you for your questions. So to answer your question on the height, we will be coming up with a finished grade of around 24 inches above the flow line currently. So we'll be coming up significantly from where it is existing, but not significantly higher than the sidewalk. Does that make sense? Yeah. And we're doing 2-story homes. Yes. Yeah. And then as far as answering your question, so that's what that northern pipe on the property, we're tying into the pipe that is going between your house and your neighbor's lot. So I can't speak to anything beyond that point up towards yours, but I know that we are adequately sized from the flows that are calculated to come out of that pipe, and are sized adequately to be able to discharge. So maybe you have more information on that, but hopefully it will maybe help mitigate any flooding potential. But
yeah, so we just, as you know, that pipe comes through your lot, like you said, and it's a 30-inch pipe, and we're continuing it as a 30-inch pipe. The only thing we're changing is it used to just go straight and discharge right here at the end of this easement, and we're just turning it and bringing it down to where it will enter into the drainage structure that was part of Quail Hollow. And so ultimately the water's going to the same place as it was going before. We're just bringing it a little bit further.
Just for the record, do you mind stating your name and address too? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm Nathan Laudick. I'm the civil engineer for the project. Laudick.
Okay, thank you. Mary, would you like to speak? No? Okay. Would anyone else in the audience like to speak? Okay. Okay, I'm now going to close the citizens forum. And is there any discussion from the commission? Okay, at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Did the additional conditions get passed down the line? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I move to recommend approval of case number MS-17-08, a request for an approval of a 4-lot subdivision on property zoned residential 1, located at 3275 Quail Street for the following reasons. Number 1, all agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. Number 2, the requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met. Is there a number 3? Okay. Pardon?
Conditions start at 4.
Oh, okay. With the following conditions, and then I move to the new sheet.
You can start with the 3 and
Gotcha,
the
okay.
Sorry, I know
Thank
it's
you,
confusing.
thank you. I'm now
apologies.
understanding. So that was number 2. Number 2, the requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met with the following conditions. Number 1, note 11 on the sheet 1 shall be modified by replacing the first 2 sentences with the following text. Utility easements are granted on private property as shown herein. Number 2, add a plat note, in quotes, a consolidation plat must be applied for lots 1 and 2 if the existing house is not demolished within 2 years of recordation of this plat. Number 3, no building permit shall be issued for lots 1 or 2 until a demolition permit is issued for the existing home. Number 4, the developer shall enter a subdivision improvement agreement whereby all required infrastructure improvements are in place prior to the issuance of building permits for the individual lots. Number 5, the developer shall pay fees in lieu of parkland dedication in the amount of $7,491.87 at the time of the plat recording. And number 6, the homeowners association covenants will be reviewed and approved by staff prior to the issuance of the building permits.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
I would just like to say I support this because I actually think the drainage is going to be vastly improved from my experience in this area.
All right, very nice. Let's call for a vote.
Motion passed 6-0.
All right, we'll now move to old business. Is there any old business? How about new business?
Our only new business, just a couple of announcements. We do anticipate to have hearings both on the March 1st and March 15th Planning Commission dates, so save those. And then I have an article that I'll share with you all. We get a variety of different publications through the office, including the Colorado Municipal League magazine, and an attorney from our city attorney's office wrote a sort of clever article on quasi-judicial cases and ex parte contacts. It's something you guys get trained in. It's usually a pretty dry topic, but she did a good job of sort of lightening that up. So it's only front and back, and I'll share that with you once we adjourn.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, let's vote.